Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. In today's episode, I'm going to give you 5 habits for permanent weight loss. You know, for the first, let's say, 30 years of my life, I was just always on the weight loss roller coaster. You know, I would gain weight, then I would get it off, and then I would put the weight back on, plus some, and then I would finally get it off, and then I would put it back on. And in a way, it kind of felt inevitable. I think because the message from the culture is like, well, you're just going to struggle with your weight. And so it's this constant battle. But I've learned some things that have really helped me on the weight loss journey where, you know, I actually lost the weight. And at this point, I've kept off my initial 65-pound loss for over 5 years now. And so there are some things that I've changed about the way I think about weight loss that has really helped me. And what it really comes down to is just being in good habits. So the first habit that's really important that has made all the difference for me is weighing. I continue to weigh every day. Even in maintenance, even, you know, and I have no plans to ever stop. To me, weighing is like a healthy habit. It's something that you do, you know, every day. I do it every day because that helps me. It's like flossing my teeth or brushing my teeth or showering. Those are all things that I have to do every day just to keep myself, you know, nice, clean, healthy, and in shape. I can gain weight really quickly. I mean, I can put on the weight really fast. It takes me a long time to get the weight off, but man, if I let things go, I can quickly gain weight. And I know this about myself. And weighing daily is just a good way. You know, my scale is like an accountability partner. I, you know, get on the scale and it tells me exactly what's going on. You know, it's easy, in my experience, it's very easy to kind of delude yourself, you know, to say, well, I'm doing a good job. I'm not overeating or anything like that. But the scale will tell you the truth. The scale will say, you know, here's how many pounds you weigh today. And that will show you, you know, are you overeating or are you not? But in the past, I would be really good about weighing when I was actually trying to lose weight. And then as soon as I hit the goal weight, I'd not step on the scale for like, you know, until I got to that point again with my weight where it's like, oh no, I've gained. And then I would look at the number and be like, oh, that's a lot more than what I thought it would be. And then I would go back to weighing and then, you know, the weight would come down. And so instead of doing that, as soon as I got down to my goal weight, I just kept weighing. And it has been very helpful. Habit number 2 is to continue to eat the way you're eating to lose weight in order to maintain the weight loss. Now, what I mean by that is, you know, in the past, what I used to do is I would, you know, eat a certain way, and then I would finally get down to my goal weight, and then I would just go back to eating how I was eating when I was overweight. And I think that was because in my mind, the weight problem I had was like, I just have, you know, X number of pounds too many on my body. You know, like I'm 50 pounds overweight, so I just need to get those 50 pounds off. And then I just get to eat, you know, like a quote unquote normal person, and that will solve the problem. But I was failing to make the connection between, you know, like there's a reason those 50 pounds came on and it has to do with how you're eating. You know, the amount of food you're eating is too much. And so you have to change that in some way. Now, for me, with intermittent fasting, what I found was you don't have to necessarily be as consistent as you are in maintenance as you have to be in order to lose weight. So what do I mean by that? Okay. Like for me personally, I prefer OMAD. I'll eat OMAD. And if I do OMAD 6 days a week, cheat day on Sunday, and walk 6 miles every single day, I know that I would continue to lose weight. I mean, I was still at a point when I decided to maintain that I was still losing. I mean, it was very slow, but I was still losing. So that tells me, like, if I want to lose weight, that's the plan I need to be on. Okay. But let's say you're doing, you know, an 18.6. Okay. And you get down to your goal weight and you were still losing weight. Well, that might mean that during maintenance, you can do something a little different. Maybe you can do a 16-8 or, like a 14-10 or something like that, or maybe just 2 meals a day. There can be a little bit of variation there, or, you may want to be even looser, because this is something that I like to experiment sometimes too with is, what's kind of like the bare minimum here that you can do? And I think it's helpful to kind of experiment with that. But ultimately, if you get too far away from what you were doing, it's really easy to let the bad habits come back in, stress eating, things like that. That can start to happen and the weight can start to come back on. But in order to just keep it off, keeping your eating very similar to what you were doing to when you were losing weight is going to be helpful. Now, one thing is, if you are, let's say you're doing a certain way, let's say a 16-8, and you get down to your goal weight, but basically the weight loss had tapered off. You just kind of like get to that point and you kind of get stuck and you say, okay, I'm good here. You're probably going to need to stick with that same window in order to maintain that weight loss. Again, I have found in maintenance, there's a little bit more, like you can be a little bit looser, but it doesn't mean no structure at all. It just means you got to keep kind of experimenting and see what works. But likely it's going to be something that looks very similar to whatever you were doing when you were losing weight actively. Habit number 3 is to stay active. Now, I mean this in 2 different ways. One way I mean is, most people find that as a part of weight loss, they do some form of exercise. I like to walk 6 miles a day. But for other people, it's, they like to run, or they like to swim, or they like to, play some sort of sport. And what I have found is that I just feel so good when I stay active. I feel good. And when you feel good, it's so much easier to do these things, to stay in good habits, to eat the right amount, to not overeat, to not stress eat. It's so much easier when you're feeling good. And the number one way I've found to just stay feeling in a pretty good mood all the time is to continue to stay active. There's just something about being sedentary that I find that like on those times where I, like even just one day where I'm just like, I'm on the couch all day, I just don't feel that great. I just don't. But staying active is helpful. Also, staying active, not just in the physical sense of, of exercise, but staying active as far as learning new things or being actively involved in your community, your church, your say your hobbies, things that you like to do, drawing, some sort of art, maybe writing, staying active in that way, because those things can help fill up your life, and it can take the focus away from food, and kind of put it in its rightful place. The 4th habit is to control stress. One thing that I really didn't understand about myself until I did intermittent fasting, and it really brought it home for me, was I was in a terrible habit of stress eating. And I really didn't realize that. It was only through the process of learning how to do intermittent fasting that I realized, wow, so often when I'm, eating, let's say just snacking around and stuff, it's because I'm stressed. And so once I learned that about myself, I realized it's really important in order to lose weight and then also to keep it off, to control the stress, as best you can. Now, one thing I've learned is you can't eliminate it all. There are situations in your life that you have no control over. They're there, they're stressful, but there's nothing you can really do. In those cases, the only thing I've found is that you just have to learn how to accept it. And there are other things that, you do have more control over. It's stressful, but, you have to do the thing. You either have to, face some sort of fear, or sometimes it's a conversation, or sometimes it's just, doing the thing, whatever it is that needs to get done, just accomplishing it. And the thing is, sometimes stress, though, is just, it's kind of sneaky. Sometimes you don't even realize you're really stressed out because you can tend to kind of ignore, the stress, maybe because you're overeating. I found that many times that's what's happening with me. I'll be, like maybe the scales start to tick up a little bit and I'll think, well, I'm not stressed. But then, I'll start to realize if I really take inventory, it's like, oh, there actually is this stressful situation that's causing this. And then I have to figure out some action to take. And some things that have helped me, are journaling and talking, especially with my spouse about things. Confession has been helpful with a priest. Praying. There are a lot of things that I've found that really do help, but it requires just taking action. And certainly a 6-mile walk is also really helpful too. Now, the last habit is to take action if the scale starts to creep up. And in my experience, maintenance is just a constant process of, weighing yourself and seeing how it's going. And there are going to be times, at least in my experience, where things aren't going to go well. Like sometimes really stressful things happen. Maybe there's an extended illness with a close family member, or, a death of a loved one, or, there's just a lot of things that can happen that are very stressful or that can kind of like knock you off your plan a little bit. Even in maintenance, even if you're being kind of loosey-goosey with it, things can happen and the scale can start to trend up. And the big thing that's helpful is to just nip it in the bud. As soon as you see that there's an upward trend, you just need to like pause and really take a look at everything that's going on, and don't be so proud to then not take action, because it's this interesting thing I've observed in myself, and I've seen other people, it happen to them, where, if the scale starts to move up, you can kind of get stubborn and think, I don't have to do anything, basically. Like, I don't need to go back to doing what I was doing, or I've got this under control now. But what has helped me is if I see the scale is starting to tick up, I say, okay, I'm going back to OMAD. I'm going to do my old reliable plan. So I go back to 1 meal a day, walking 6 miles a day, cheat day on Sunday. And I'm back on that plan until I can figure out, okay, what's going on. 99 times out of 100, it's been stress. It's just, I'm stressed out about this and I just need to get my stress under control. And then I can go back to being a bit more loosey-goosey and be more experimental and all that stuff. But there is that human tendency sometimes to want to think, well, I shouldn't have to do this anymore. I should be able to just, like have it all under control, and I shouldn't have to be so structured and that kind of thing. But sometimes I have to do that, like for me personally, my maintenance goal is to maintain in the 140s. But if I start to get up in the 150s, then I start to say, oh, I'm going to have to do something. And generally speaking, what I've seen is, okay, it's like a stressful time. This and this and this are happening. So what am I going to do? And what I've found works for me is just to say, okay, during this period of time, I'm going to go back to eating 1 meal a day, walking 6 miles a day, cheat day on Sunday, that old reliable plan that I know works. And then, of course, the weight starts to, go back down. And then, if I decide like, oh, I want to, experiment with 2 meals a day or whatever the thing is, then I can do that. But the first step is to be in that range that I want to be in. And so I would offer to you, don't ever feel disappointed in yourself if you ever get to that point where, you've lost the weight and you've been maintaining it. And if the scale starts to trend up, it's okay. Like you'll figure it out, and don't be afraid to just say, okay, I just need to go back onto the plan for a while until I figure out what is going on. It takes a lot of effort to lose the weight in the first place. And it can be scary, when you first get down to your goal weight, to think, like, am I going to be able to keep this off? And in my experience, it's no magic. It's simple, taking the actions that are required, staying in these good habits that keep the weight off, and not being too proud to say, hey, scale is starting to move up. So now I got to get back on the thing that I know works until I can figure out, like if you're needing to change your plan a little bit, you can figure that out too. It just takes some experimentation. So thank you for joining me in this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Do you want to lose the weight without getting rid of the foods you love and that you'll go back to eating again anyway? My book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, teaches you how to practice intermittent fasting so that you lose the weight sustainably and keep it off for good. You can get the audiobook read by me for free when you sign up for your 30-day trial of Audible. The link is in the show notes. And if you've gotten value from this podcast and you'd like to let other people know about it, it would be great if you could leave a review on either iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks.